Okay, so in this video, we are going to look at the technological and the institutional reforms as in the context of the Indian agriculture. So, we mentioned in the previous pages that the agriculture has been practiced in India for thousands of years. Now, there have been sustained uses of land without compatible techno institutional changes, have really hindered the pace of agricultural development. In spite of the development of sources of irrigation, most of the farmers in large parts of the country still depend upon monsoon and natural fertility in order to carry out their agriculture. So, this is showing some of the challenges in Indian agriculture. Now, we also have the challenge of a growing population. This really poses a serious challenge. So, agriculture provides livelihood for more than 60% of India's population. It does need some serious technical and institutional reforms. Now, this collectivization, that is the consolidation of holdings, the cooperation and abolition of zamindari, etc., were given priority to bring about institutional reforms in the country after independence. Land reform was the main focus for the first 5 year plan of India. The right of inheritance had already led to fragmentation of land holdings, necessitating the consolidation of holdings. So there are two areas, right? One is the institutional reforms, and the other one is the technological. So in the institutional reforms, here are just some of the areas that the government worked on. Now, the laws of the land reforms were enacted, but again, the problem was that whether they were implemented properly. So, the implementation was lacking or lukewarm, which means they were not either implemented properly or people just had resistance to it. So, the government of India then embarked upon introducing agricultural reforms to improve Indian agriculture in the 1960s and 70s. The green revolution, so this is another important concept, which was based on the use of package technology, and the white revolution, that is operation flood, were some of the strategies initiated to improve the lot of the Indian agriculture. But this also led to the concentration of development in a few selected areas. So, in the 1980s and 1990s, a comprehensive land development program was initiated, which include both institutional and technical reforms. So, provision for crop insurance. This was one of the things against drought, flood, cyclone, fire, and disease. Establishment of Grameen banks. Grameen means village. Cooperative societies and banks for providing loan facilities to the farmers at lower rates of interest were some important steps in this direction. So, making it easier for farmers to be able to continue their practice of agriculture. Now, the Kisan Credit Card or KCC, Personal Accident Insurance Scheme PAIS, are some of the other schemes introduced by Government of India for the benefit of farmers. Moreover, special weather bulletins and agricultural programs for farmers were introduced on the radio and television. The government also announces minimum support price, remunerative and procurement prices for important crops to check the exploitation of farmers by speculators as well as middlemen. Now, you might have heard about this something called Bhudan or Gramdan. So, Mahatma Gandhi declared Vinoba Bhave as his spiritual heir. He also participated in Satyagraha as one of the foremost Satyagrahis. He was one of the votaries of Gandhi's concept of Gram Swarajya. After Gandhi's martyrdom, Vinoba Bhave undertook Padayatra to spread Gandhiji's message and covered almost the entire country. Once, when he was delivering a lecture at Pochampally in Andhra Pradesh, some poor landless villagers demanded some land for their economic well being. Vinoba Bhave could not promise it to them immediately but assured them to talk to Government of India regarding provision of land for them if they undertook cooperative farming. Suddenly, Sri Ramchandra Reddy stood up and offered 80 acres of land to be distributed among 80 landless villagers. This act was known as Bhudan. Later, he travelled and introduced his ideas widely all over India. Some zamindars, owners of many villages, offered to distribute some villages among the landless. It was known as Gramdan. However, many landowners chose to provide some part of the land to the poor farmers due to the fear of Land Ceiling Act. This Bhudan Gramdan movement, initiated by Vinoba Bhave, is also known as the Bloodless Revolution. Now let us look at what is the contribution of the agriculture to the national economy, employment, as well as the output. So agriculture has been the backbone of the Indian economy through its share in the gross domestic product, or the GDP, and has registered, unfortunately, a declining trend from 1951 onwards. According to the Census of India 2011, about 54.6% of the total workforce was engaged in agriculture and allied sector activities, which makes more than half of the Indian population dependent on agriculture for sustenance. The declining share of agriculture in the GDP is a matter of serious concern because any decline and stagnation in agriculture will lead to a decline in other spheres of economy, however much more wider implications on the society. Now, considering the importance of agriculture in India, the government of India made concerted efforts to modernize agriculture. Establishment of the Indian Council of Agricultural Research ICAR, agricultural universities, veterinary services, and animal breeding centers, horticulture development, research and development in the field of meteorology and weather forecasts, etc., were given priority for improving Indian agriculture. Apart from this, improving the rural infrastructure was also considered essential for the same. In order to strengthen and support agricultural sector, several initiatives have been taken by the government of India under the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. Collect information about this and learn to know more about and discuss about this in the classroom. Now, in the table 4.1, it is clear that the GDP growth rate is increasing over the years. It is not generating sufficient employment opportunities in the country. So you can see this is the sector and growth rate of the GDP of major sectors. So you can see that agriculture has declined. The industry, growth rate has increased from three, almost kind of doubled, and services is kind of stable, or maybe say let's a little bit of like maybe 25 or so percent of growth from 8 to 10. So the overall, GDP has grown from 5.6 to 7.4, but this is not generating sufficient employment opportunities, right? So the growth rate in agriculture has been decelerating, which is an alarming situation. Today, Indian farmers are facing a big challenge from international competition and reduction in the public investment in agriculture sector. So subsidy on fertilizers is decreased, leading to increase in the cost of production. Moreover, reduction in import duties on agricultural products have proved detrimental to agriculture in the country. Farmers are withdrawing their investment from agriculture, causing a downfall in the employment in agriculture. Now, here is some question for you. When farmers have been facing so many problems and land under agriculture is decreasing, what are some of the alternative employment opportunities in the agriculture sector? Can you think about it? How would you go about solving this problem? Now, let us look at the impact of globalization on agriculture. So, globalization is not a new phenomenon. It was there at the time of colonization. In the 19th century, when European traders came to India at the time too, Indian spices were exported to different countries of the world, and farmers of South India were encouraged to grow these crops. Till today, it is one of the most important items of export from India. Now, during the British period, cotton belts of India attracted the British, and ultimately, cotton was exported to Britain as a raw material for their textile industries. The cotton textile industry in Manchester and Liverpool flourished due to the availability of good quality of cotton from India. And you have read about the Champaran movement, which started in 1917 in Bihar. This was started because farmers of that region were forced to grow indigo on their land because it was necessary for the textile industries which were located in Britain. They were unable to grow food grains to sustain their families. Now, under globalization, particularly after 1990, the farmers in India have been exposed to new challenges. So, what are these new challenges? Despite being an important producer of rice, cotton, rubber, tea, coffee, jute, and spices, our agricultural products are not able to compete with the developed countries because of the highly subsidized agriculture in these countries. Today, Indian agriculture finds itself at the crossroads. To make agriculture successful and profitable, this is the main thing, successful as well as profitable, proper thrust should be given to the improvement of the condition of marginal and small farmers. The Green Revolution promised much, but today it is under controversies. It is being alleged that it caused land degradation due to overuse of chemicals, drying aquifers, and vanishing biodiversity. The keyword today is gene revolution, which includes the genetic engineering. So, genetic engineering is recognized as a powerful supplement in inventing new hybrid varieties of seed, and they could be even high yielding. Now, you might want to just do a little bit of search and if you can name any gene modified seed used in India. In fact, organic farming is much in vogue today because it is practiced without factory made chemicals such as fertilizers and pesticides. Hence, it does not affect the environment in a negative manner. A few economists think that Indian farmers have a bleak future if they continue growing food grains on the holdings that grow smaller and smaller as the population rises. So, India's rural population is about 833 million, which is more than half of what we have of the population, which depends upon 250 million hectares of agricultural land and average less than half a hectare per person. So, Indian farmers should diversify their cropping pattern from cereals to high value crops. This will increase incomes and reduce environmental degradation simultaneously. Because fruits, medicinal herbs, flowers, vegetables, and biodiesel crops like jatropha and jojoba need much less irrigation than rice or sugarcane, India's diverse climate can be harnessed to grow a wide range of high value crops. So, final kind of snippet of this chapter. So, the change in cropping pattern, for example, from cereals to high value crops, will mean that India will have to import food. So, during 1960s, this would have been seen as a disaster. But if India imports cereals while exporting high value commodities, it will be following successful economies like Italy, Israel, and China. These countries export farm products, fruit, olives, especially seeds and wine, and import cereals. Is India ready to take this risk? Debate this issue. So that is it. We looked at three aspects. So we right now looked at the kind of controversies and so on, um, uh, and mostly the impact of globalization on agriculture. We also looked at the contribution of agriculture to the national economy, the employment as well as the output. And before that, we looked at some of the technological and institutional reforms introduced by the government of India in the field of agriculture. So, this concludes our chapter.